Hello gorgeous peeps, I'm Chris from TechSpert and this right here is the latest iPhone 12 and I'm just going to start this review with a little wee disclaimer of sorts. If for whatever reason you've clicked on this video hoping for just straight up vacant praise of Apple and iPhones in general, then you're probably not going to be a very happy bunny, so you might as well just hammer that dislike button and bugger right off. Now I've had the iPhone 12 for just under a month now and I've had my SIM slapped in there for the last week using it exclusively as my full-time smartphone ahead of this review. And spoiler alert for the upcoming review, it's alright, it's absolutely fine. It's better than older iPhones in quite a few respects, and it also, in just as many respects, feels like a missed opportunity. So here's my full iPhone 12 review, and a big thanks to Sky Mobile as well for sending in this review sample. You can grab the iPhone 12 direct from those lovely mofos on contract right now. They've got a whole bunch of Black Friday deals on the go. I'll bung the details of that down in the video description. Now, the iPhone 12's 6.1-inch display is actually one of the smallest around in 2020 alongside Google's Pixel phones. However, while that screen is compact, the phone itself isn't, thanks to Apple's bizarrely old-fashioned brick-like design. From the chunky finish to those big fat bezels, it's almost like we're right back in 2012. Which, to be fair, would be pretty bloody lovely because I was still a fresh-faced 30-year-old with a little bit of hair left on my head and only a semi-pickled liver. And even if for some bizarre reason it was the 2012 straight out of that god-awful John Cusack movie, it would definitely still somehow be preferable to the real-life 2020 that we're living through right now. But even if you're a big fan of nostalgia, the iPhone 12 isn't particularly comfortable to clutch and use one-handed, although those rounded corners definitely do help. But the design has improved for this generation in one key area, and that is durability. Seriously, the ceramic shield display on this thing is an absolute godsend. My old iPhones, they used to get scratched to buggery in mere weeks, but this thing's still absolutely pristine even a full month on. And those aluminium edges and the glass back seem to be just as rugged, so if I give my iPhone 12 a quick buffing, it basically looks box fresh. And as usual, you've got the added reassurance of that IP68 dust and water resistance. And it's great to see that Apple is still decking out its flagship smartphones in a range of colourful finishes as well, something that's missing from all too many more premium Androids. Now let's move on to the software side of things, and as usual iOS does seem a little bit antiquated in some areas, from the complete lack of an always on display and a basic back swipe gesture to the messy and frustrating notification handling. And many iOS apps still feel that little bit less refined compared with the Android versions, be it Deezer halting all in-progress downloads as soon as you minimise it, which to be fair could be down to dodgy iOS background management instead, or Apple Pay refusing to accept my main payment card despite it working just fine on other services like Google Pay, or Skype not actually bothering to inform me in any way, shape or form when somebody is trying to call me until I've actually missed the call, and then up pops the notification, kind of like a smoke alarm, not actually bothering to tell you that the house is on fire until it's already collapsed into fiery rubble. But that bit of grumbling aside, I didn't actually see any iOS bugs at all on the iPhone 12 during the last month that I've been using it, and usually iPhones can be a little bit quirksome when they're first released. Like for instance, just constantly killing the Bluetooth connection for absolutely no reason on God's green earth. But with the iPhone 12, none of that. And yes, of course, iOS is still fantastic in plenty of ways too, from the guaranteed update support, the well-designed cross-device connectivity, and those strong security features, not forgetting the ever-evolving control center, which is now genuinely brilliant. And then of course there's the small matter of MagSafe, which is definitely one of the more intriguing new additions to this generation of iPhones, and it'll be really interesting to see how it evolves over time. Of course, Motorola already tried something very similar with its Moto Mods attachments, and sadly that didn't really get fully embraced by third parties and eventually just ended up on the mound of corpses of good ideas that just weren't meant to be. But at least you know here on the iPhone is gonna get that third party support, so it'll be interesting to see what gets wheeled out over the coming months and how it really evolves, as I say, over time. Because yeah, that could definitely be a killer reason for upgrading to the iPhone 12 over an older model. However, one feature that Apple most definitely did not add into the iPhone 12 was a fingerprint sensor, which in a normal world would not be a problem as that face unlock works so bloody well, but these days it's a bit more of an issue. And once again, Apple is being super stingy on the storage front with a meager, miserly 64 gigs packed into the base model. That's half the amount that you'll find on smartphones that are less than a third of the cost of this thing, which again wouldn't really be much of a problem if you had expandable storage, which of course as usual you don't. Now, somewhat unbelievably, this is the first vanilla iPhone model to come packing an OLED display, and that 6.1-inch panel is an absolute cracker. High-res photos and video look stunningly realistic with sharp detail and natural color tones that really bring more vivid images to life. Contrast is perfect with deep blacks and crisp whites. And if you max out that brightness, you'll have a comfortable viewing experience even on the sunniest and most splendid of days. But for reasons, Apple is still steadfastly refusing to retire that ridiculously chunky Alf Garnet mustache notch up top. And yes, it still forces its way distractingly into frame when you're watching full screen stuff on the iPhone 12. It's the smartphone equivalent of being sat behind someone at the cinema wearing a f***ing Abraham Lincoln hat. And I'm sorry, but the lack of a 90Hz screen refresh rate on such an expensive smartphone in 2020 is absolutely unforgivable. Coming to the iPhone 12 from pretty much any Android out there, even really budget models, you'll notice instantly that skimming through apps and menus and things like that is a lot less smooth. But on the audio front, pretty much no complaints whatsoever beyond the usual omission of a headphone jack, which to be fair, pretty much all premium smartphones these days are guilty of. That stereo speaker setup is loud and punchy. Seriously, this thing will pop your eardrums if you're not careful.
And a Billy Big Bollocks Pixel 5 flagship phone.
And I spent a lot of time testing that Bluetooth connectivity as well, just in case, and it proves 100% dependable and lag-free. Performance is definitely a big reason for bagging an iPhone 12 as well, because Apple's A14 chipset is a bit of a beefcake. Beyond setup, I never saw any stumbles or stammers at all, while games like Call of Duty Mobile played like an absolute dream on those topmost detail settings. And of course, with the iPhone 12 family, Apple has loudly and excitedly finally jumped on that 5G bandwagon for a bit of future-proofed connectivity. And our American chums who are lucky enough to live in an area where millimeter wave 5G is already rolling out can take advantage of that super fast 5G connectivity as well, whereas us pond dwellers over here in Blighty, we're limited to good old sub 6, unfortunately, which isn't quite as quick. In fact, apparently Apple hasn't even bothered to include millimeter wave support on any iPhone 12 sold here in Blighty, so bear that in mind if you want some proper future proofing or if you spend a fair bit of time in the States, or at least are planning to after all this COVID shenanigans. And one of the other improvements that I noticed with the iPhone 12 over previous incarnations was the battery life, which is rather ruddy good here. This chunky beast can easily survive through even the most action-packed days, no worries. In fact, a fair bit of the time when I staggered to bed at the end of a very long day, I still had around 30% charge remaining, which is impressive indeed. However, that said, I have heard numerous reports of 5G sapping the battery life of this thing rather quickly, which I haven't been able to personally test because I'm very rarely in an area with 5G support. Hopefully once things are a bit less crazy and I actually get the chance to travel into central London a bit more, I'll be able to fully test that out, so that'll be something for more of a long-term review, hopefully when COVID is being less of a shit. And as usual, the iPhone 12 supports a lovely bit of wireless charging on top of your usual lightning cable shenanigans, and I'm not even going to begin to bang on about how they didn't bother to include a power adapter in the box, despite the fact that they've changed their cabling setups and everything, because frankly I've bitched on about enough stuff already. Now let's end this stream of merriment with a squint at that dual camera tech, comprising two 12-megapixel shooters, one of which offers a wide-angle view. The primary sensor, combined with Apple's behind-the-scenes processing, serves up tasty-looking photos in pretty much any conditions. As always, scenes are naturally reproduced. It's very rare to see colours that appear warmer or cooler than they do in real life. 12 megapixels still proves just about enough to deliver fine detail even when you view your shots back on a big screen, and the iPhone 12 doesn't struggle with high dynamic range, so bright skies don't throw it off. Indoor shots too are well handled, so you don't end up with soft or artificial looking pics. As with Google's Pixel phones, the emphasis here is on ease of use. You won't be bogged down with whole tons of camera features, and there's no kind of pro mode to speak of on here either. 99% of the time it is literally point and shoot and let the iPhone handle the heavy lifting. Apple's night mode still activates automatically, and it isn't quite as impressive as Huawei or Google's efforts, but it's really not that far off. You'll get bright, well-balanced results with it in action, and not much loss in colour detail. And then there's that ultra-wide-angle lens, which can be swapped to at any time with a quick tap, and this performs in a similar fashion to the primary sensor, although colour reproduction is often a little warmer here. And Apple usually does good on the video side of things as well, and the big new addition for the iPhone 12 family is Dolby Vision support if you want to capture a bit of HDR action. And I found that my standard 4K test footage looked great on my telly, all sharp detail and natural colours just like my photos. Audio capture is strong from all angles, with only a little wind distortion on breezy days, plus you can swap between the primary and wide angle sensor as merrily and as often as your little fuzzy heart desires. Image stabilisation is good too, so you can move and shoot without vomit-inducing results. Flip around to the front camera and that 12 megapixel selfie snapper also does a fine job, capturing natural looking skin tones even when you're snapping away against a bright background. Those portrait smarts are back in action and you can even grab a decent shot in low light. So that right there is my full and final iPhone 12 review, and I know I get a lot of for sounding overly down on iPhones in these reviews, and don't get me wrong, it's not a bad phone. It will do pretty much everything that you need it to, and it is an improvement of course over older iPhones in several areas. But when you're dropping 800 quid minimum on this thing, just bear in mind that you're having to tolerate certain omissions and certain features such as the lack of a 90Hz screen refresh rate, the awkward blocky design, the meager amount of storage, that ridiculous Afghan tash notch. But if you're willing to put up with all these little foibles or they don't really matter to you, then you'll enjoy the iPhone 12. Personally, I would just rather go with a rival like the Samsung Galaxy S20 Fan Edition or the OnePlus 8T. So that's what I think anyway of the iPhone 12, but what do you think? If you've been using the iPhone 12 yourself, be great to hear what you love, what you don't love, all of that good stuff down in the comments below. And for more on the latest greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers everyone, love you!